Oh, hello. I am bringing you guys one of the most incredible women I have ever met in my life. She happens to be the co-author of this month's book in Book Nook. This woman, hi, Dr. Nasha, I'm going to grab you in just a second. This woman is a global thought leader in integrative oncology. She is a holistic naturopathic physician. She has personal and professionally accrued over 30 decades of experience in this space, and she is all about empowering women on the tools and empowering women, men as well, through a holistic approach to being our best selves. So this is not just for anyone who has experienced cancer, but for all of us. All right, let me pull her in. Sometimes it pauses when you pull someone in, and I just needed to do her justice. This woman is one of the most incredible resources you will ever meet. So stop your scroll, put your stuff down, quit your distractions, and listen in. I'm telling you, this woman is a gift. Okay, invited her. Let's see if we can get this to work. There she is. Hello, Dr.
Oh,
Winters.
I always hold my breath on these moments of technology. You are such a diva. It's so fun to be with you.
And I remember one time when I saw you spoke, and you're such a girlfriend's girl and such an incredible wealth of knowledge. You guys are in for such a treat. But literally, you were talking about hormesis and stress, and you were like, "Yep, if anyone could smell me up here, got a little hormesis going on." Like, we get a little. We all have human experience emotions, no matter how long you have been doing this. And for IG Lives, they're so fun because they're so organic. I feel like this is such a great way to like truly get to know somebody.
Yep, yep. I love it.
And that's why I wanted to bring you in here. You know, I have loved this book club, this online community
Yeah.
for women. As you know, you had been one of the first people I talked to
I know.
about.
I'm so stoked that you launched this, and it's just seemingly like it's just exploding.
It's getting there. There's a little movement, and you know, my favorite thing about it, honestly, is to introduce women. Mainly, it's women in the community to these incredible people behind the books. Because I
Mm.
don't know about you, but it's like when you read a book,
Yeah.
it's one thing. And then when you understand someone's mission and heart and their why and their ability to go through fire and like reach back and give you the tools that they
Totally.
didn't have, those are my people. And so I'm so excited to share you with this community.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. I got to tell you and your listeners, like I fangirl on you so hard from the very first moment I met you to watching you even just explode into your Melissa-ness in such the profound way. I mean, I can't even like I love everything you're doing. And so I feel so honored that you would even consider inviting people like me or other amazing female authors into your space because we've been watching and following you and your lead. And you've been inspiring, aptly named, all of us to, just like be our most authentic self. And one of my favorite things that you do is just when you're like in the morning, like hair all messed, and you're just like, good, hi, here we are, here's the reality of my day. That is what makes it so beautiful because social media can be used for the wrong, right? It can be all polished and inauthentic. And I'm really uncomfortable being on this space because I can't not be just me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always feel like it needs to be in a certain way. And so I'm really grateful we get to do this today together.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here and thank you for saying that. I don't know if it's just I hit a certain age where I'm like the things that make me the weirdest are have become my favorite things. And I'm
Yes.
not going to hide them anymore because we all are weird and those are the things that unite us, right? Those are the fun things that we all show
Right.
to our favorite people. Like why
Yeah,
not show that if we're going to be on this platform? So
exactly.
thank you for saying that.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thank you.
so I want to just hit it right out the gate because I
Okay.
really want people to know you.
Okay.
So tell our listeners how old you were when you got diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer.
Yeah. So I was in and out of the ER for the months leading up to my 20th birthday. And it was about 2 weeks before my 20th birthday that they realized I had cancer. They just didn't know the official details of it until about the 21st of October 1991. It would still take a few weeks to get the official biopsy results back in diagnosis. So basically, from about mid-September of 1991 until October 21st of 1991, we knew it was bad. We just didn't know how bad, and we didn't know all the details. So yeah, I was 19, just shy of the 20th birthday. So gosh, coming on 34 years ago.
Wow,
Yeah.
it sounds crazy, right? It doesn't match with how old you are.
Mm-mm. No, in my mind, I'm still very, very young and sassy. So
In your soul too, in your soul for sure. So, that pretty much like set you obviously on a trajectory. I mean, this is now what you do for people in your life. So, I know I'm kind of jumping from
yeah,
beginning to current. We froze a little bit. Hang
you're
on,
there.
hang tight.
I gotcha.
Tell people, and we're going to put your website and everything down below, but like, what is it now that you do for
Mm.
people that you support? When you get that call, when that person comes in,
Yeah. Well,
where all I mean, it's
all the
such an
things.
open-ended question, but you're doing
Sure.
so many incredible things as far as the movement of integrative oncology.
I appreciate that. Well, funny thing is, I wanted nothing to do with oncology in the beginning. Even when I landed in naturopathic school a few years after my diagnosis, I hid my diagnosis. I actually hid my diagnosis, the extent of it, until about 2012. So just to give people that perspective, 91 through 2012, we could have that conversation on a different IG live because boy, the unpacking of that story is pretty interesting.
Well,
Talking
we're
about
going to
leaving
have you, you're going to come in the
up.
podcast, right? And we're going to go into all the juicies. But yeah,
There
plant the
you go.
seeds. Keep going,
Yeah,
keep
so
going.
seed planted. But basically, it's like, no way am I ever going to touch oncology with a 10-foot pole. And then lo and behold, my first week of private practice, somebody came in for pain management because I was also an acupuncturist or am also an acupuncturist. And it just became a thing. Taking someone with a stage 4 end stage glioblastoma multiforme, given days to live, who then managed to live another 18 months beyond that under the care I had, suddenly percolated in my tiny little mountain town that I worked well with cancer patients. And before I knew it, they were kicking down the door. And so by 2012, I pretty much completely went 100% oncology, despite having a very big, robust 2,500 patient rich family practice in my tiny little mountain town, and got to be known more and more for cancer. So, but what I want your listeners to know is that I've never treated cancer, not even in myself. Okay. And that's what the book is all about. It's about, how do I treat the environment in which the cancer took root, in which the cancer expressed. And that's what I've gotten really good at, understanding people, their biography that leads to their biology, their chronology that leads to that moment in time. That's what I'm interested in. Those are the stories I get to collect. And those are our patterns that we get to realize together and then address it appropriately. And so today, I no longer work directly with patients. Since about 2020, I now train clinicians, allied health professionals, and patient advocates, to date well over 1,000 people in over 46 countries and growing. So I get to teach them the same methodology that I had success with in my own life and the lives of tens of thousands of patients I had direct hand in their care.
It's incredible because, you had a certain amount of impact one-on-one in the room with the patient, with the client, and now think of the effect that you have. This is how it's global. And there's actually one of the members in the book club community. Her son had leukemia this past year, and they worked with one of your trained clinicians, and he's doing great. And this was part of why I was like, it's time to bring Dr. Nasha in, because this woman had spoke so highly of how,
Oh,
everything that you guys are doing has impacted and create a ripple in their family. You talk about the terrain.
yeah.
And so what I really want to highlight too, people could see this book and think, I'm not in this situation. This isn't for me. And
Mhm.
let's touch on that, because this is for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yes. I love that you bring that up because my husband literally day to day says to me, I wish this book had been renamed. Like, I wish it didn't have the word cancer in it, because that's such a wall, or it has such a gut response in people that they're either, oh, that's not me, or I don't want that to be me, or that's not me, but I'm not into alternative medicine. I hope that by the time people read this, to your point, is that this is really about the metabolic approach to life. It's about true prevention. It's about supporting the entire organism this whole thing here. And it's not a one-sided treatment idea or protocol or plan, and it is not dismissive of standard of care. In fact, it knows when and how to weave the story together beautifully for treatment for the individual, both in a preventative state, a during treatment state, or a survivorship state after they get through the sort of crisis of it all.
So important. And Sonia, the woman I was just talking about, she's in here. She said, "Hello,
Oh,
ladies. You helped her whole family
hello.
and her son. So thank you, thank you." Yes,
So
thank
good.
you for touching on that because it's so important. And the reality is we all have cancer in us.
Exactly. Yeah. And some studies show we go in and out of a cancering. I use that verb meaning, very intentionally. We
Mm-hmm.
go in and out of cancer an average of 7 times in our lifetime. And our body is so beautifully designed that it knows what to do with that. It's always in surveillance. It's always taking in the information, translating it, and sending out signals to do something about it until it gets overwhelmed. And now that 1 in 2 of us are
One, two.
in 2 now globally will expect to have this diagnosis in their lifetime, we are clearly putting too much new information into the body that is overwhelming it. And so that surveillance system is failing, that translational system is failing, and that signaling system is failing. And that's what we get to evaluate together is how to clean up that process and how to support that again, whether this is prevention, in the process of a diagnosis and treatment, or in the aftermath.
Mm, that's crazy. I didn't know it was 1 and 2. I thought it was
Yeah,
still 1 and 4. I mean, it literally touches every single person.
exactly.
And I had read this a number of years ago, probably when I first met you.
Yeah,
And this book was so ahead of its time back then. Everything that you're talking in this book. So it was published in 2017.
yeah, crazy, right?
This is
Yeah.
like a biohacker's guide to how to live. I saw you on one of your posts on your Instagram. You were like, it's really the biohackers, not necessarily the traditional medical doctors,
Mhm.
that are moving us forward in a way that actually has the ability to heal us.
Yes. Yeah.
So, what did you mean by that? Tell me.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that it puts the power back into us. It gives us the opportunity to do something about it, to change the environment, to upgrade, optimize, ourselves in meaningful ways. And the research is not interested out there in funding things that don't bring back a high ROI. Like if this, you can't really tell someone to go take a walk in the sunshine and get billions of dollars in return of investment on that. No one's really interested in those types of studies. So many of us have been in of one living laboratories and anecdotally learning these things for ourselves. And what I tell folks is that's still the scientific method. That's still observing. That's still analyzing. That's still asking really good questions. And yet, because it's not been fully embraced in our standard of care medical systems, it gets sort of ignored or sort of, yeah, that's important, but. And the irony is, so many of the treatments today for standard of care oncology, they fall flat if they're not received in an environment that can frankly receive them. And so maybe I should speak a little bit to that. I mean, just an
Yeah.
example, when you're under extreme stress or duress, which anyone with a diagnosis of cancer is, right? That's also what likely helped lead to that process for many of us, not all of us, but many of us.
And it's
But when
likely
we're
everybody at some point we're living in
Absolutely,
stress.
absolutely, absolutely. There was one of Dr. Lawrence Lashan, who's now recently passed, just hit 100 years old. I think 2 years ago he passed away. Wrote an incredible book called "Cancer as a Turning Point." He actually talks about the real emergency of cancer is that the diagnosis and
Mm-hmm.
how we respond to that information may actually lay the foundation for how we respond to our treatments and therefore our response to that treatment. And so that's something I'm constantly trying to help people go, yep, it's okay to lose your shit for a minute, and be scared or be on the pity pot, but that isn't a place that helps in the long haul. Now, let's like reframe it. Let's understand that your body's trying to tell you something. Let's figure out what that something is. And let's give you the tools and the resources to meet this head on in a different way. That you are an active participant, preferably in the driver's seat, and that people like me or your standard of care team are simply your GPS.
Mm. I love that. I mean, when you have tools, you have hope,
Ugh, yes,
right?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yes.
Oh, I feel like my beatnik days are coming through.
Right. And that makes so much sense because you cannot heal in a state of survival. And I imagine, I mean, that's so human to go to that place.
Yeah,
But this is what I
exactly.
love. This is to have someone who knows this field inside and out to be guiding, like you said, the GPS. Like, yes, of course you're feeling this, but let me pull you back here. Let me remind you of
Mm,
how incredible your terrain, and let's define what you mean by that, because you talk about that a lot in this book.
yeah,
How incredible your body is, and let me give you the tools to support that.
yeah,
Because when we can support that, our body is naturally designed to manage these
yeah,
cancer cells. That's
yeah,
how we're built, right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
you take a terrain approach. So what does that mean?
Sure. So let me give an example. I'll give an analogy. So standard of care, when you think about how standard of care today deals with infections, hypertension, depression, cancers, there's these antibiotics, antihypertensives, antidepressants, those types of things. You can notice a theme here, sort of like a polarity of this, thus, combat it with this. That idea, how it plays out into the train, is imagine you throw all of your garbage out your window off your kitchen, right? You start just throwing it out there. It's fine for a couple days, but then you start to notice a few flies flying around your kitchen. And so you maybe close the window and you're like, still good. And then it starts to, even with the window closed, you're like, still flies are getting in here and it's getting a little smelly. And then you start to aerate, bring in the fragrance into the household to make that smell better. And then finally, you're like, well, I just gotta like blow that out. Maybe I'm gonna burn it all the way out here and take care of it. That is the standard of care approach today. It doesn't go and say, which is more of a terrain centric approach, why don't we take out the garbage? Why don't we properly dispose of that garbage? Why don't we change the environment? Maybe we don't have as much garbage to get rid of because we're not giving it as much stuff that needs to be taken care of. That mindset is so different. And yet at the end of the day, we all have the same goal. We want the best for our patients. This isn't a problem of saying your doctor doesn't care about you. This is a problem of just saying how we've been trained is this idea that we can somehow eradicate things. And yet these things show up in us not as enemies, but as messengers. And when I think about the terrain, I think about this sort of internal garden of yours that may have a few weeds. And sometimes weeds can be noxious, right? And so we can, of course, address those and pluck them out. But most of the time, weeds arise, even in nature, outside of our bodies, to heal something, to
Mm-hmm.
signal something. Like dandelions show up in areas that need a lot of chelation,
Oh,
or milkweed or some of these other things show up because of lack of certain minerals in the soil. Well, the same thing is happening inside of us. And so when we can think about the body as this ecosystem and it's interacting with the ecosystem inside, but also the ecosystem outside, it starts to change the perspective that, wow, there's a lot more I can do to make my ecosystem strong so that less weeds want to take root.
mm. And I imagine with this, there's side benefits instead of side effects.
Always, always, because and what's really interesting is weeds in what we consider weeds, like dandelions. I mean, people go to nuts spraying dandelions in their front yards, and yet medicinally, that is probably one of the most powerful medicinal herbs we have on the planet. You can
Mhm.
eat them. Like they're great nourishment. The flowers are delicious. You can turn them into a tonic. The root works on kidney dysfunction. The leaves work on liver dysfunction. They're general cleansers of the body. Well, think about that. They're cleansers of the soil too. So they're cleansing on the outside and the inside. And so we go after these weeds, but like, aren't they actually trying to help us?
Yeah.
And so these are those moments that we have to reframe our thought process and our approach that says, yes, you can still take care of the weeds, but you can also amend the soil so they're less likely to be needed
Mm.
to heal whatever they're trying to heal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love it. We've got
Mhm.
some comments. Melissa, who is
Cool.
your co-host? This is Dr. Nasha Winters.
Oh,
She is the
oh,
co-author of this month's book. So Divine You, this will be on the grid. You can hear from the beginning. She's an incredible resource. All right. So that all being said, I mean, again, it's almost like this book needs a second edition to come out again now, because
Mm,
you were talking about all these things in 2017. I mean, you're talking about ketogenic diet, you're talking about bio individualized therapies, you're talking about circadian rhythm, you're talking about not fearing the sun, and that we need the sun and sleep and stress.
yeah,
And like, I feel like the masses are finally thirsty for this message because people are
yes.
understanding what we're doing is not working so great.
Exactly. First, I love it. And it's funny this book was born out of me doing from about 2009 until 2016. I used to facilitate cancer retreats with my husband, with my sister-in-law, with my co-author, who was also the nutritionist in my office. And we would bring in people and immerse them. Okay. We would immerse them in an experience. They come in on a Friday evening and leave on Monday morning. So
Oh,
we
cool.
had access and we could put them into a container, right? But they also, before they came, they did labs. And the week or two after they left, they did labs again. And we could completely transform their terrain via labs and objective as well as subjective data to show that even that tiny window of time together, we could make deep impact. I would give them a 250-page manual. I would like teach at them for 2 straight days. Each meal would be like, here's what you're eating and why it's helping and what it's doing. Or here's why we're not eating right now and what it's doing and what it's, they would all just scream at the end of the weekend, this is so amazing, but so overwhelming. You need to write a book. And in my life at that time, I could not even imagine scratching out the time to write this book. And Jess, my co author, said, Nasha, you have all the content. You have all the information. You've been doing this in your life and your practice for over 2 decades. I can help you put it all together. Jess is a really great writer. She's like, let's do this together and let's birth this baby. We call each other's baby book doulas. So we really put this together. When we put it into the publisher in November of 2016 and it launched, burst into the world in May of 2017, she and I were already realizing we already have a new edition brewing. Now, life has happened, and our own publishing company came to us, Chelsea Green Publishing, who was also acquired by and merged with Penguin and Random House, massive. So tiny little small little independent, taken over by the big guys, but still holding true to their values. They came back to us and said, "Ladies, it's time for your 10th edition. For your expanded." And so that is happening. 2026. Jess and I are going deep into the writer hole. To get a new edition, you have to have at least 25% new content. We're kind of terrifying our publishers because we've got about 75% new content.
Oh my gosh, I'm
We
so
have basically a new book coming out in October 27, but nothing is irrelevant in this current edition.
I'm
That's
sure.
what I want. Yeah. And to your point, we're asking to rename it
Mm.
so that it may still say the metabolic approach to cancer, but it's going to have like one of those red lines through it and then say dot 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 to life,
Oh,
because that is where it's had to change,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that, just to open the doors to everybody.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want to ask, who is, I
Mhm.
love it. Now that I'm writing my book, I'm like, I look
Yes.
at it different. I'm about to do the dedication and the acknowledgments. You
Mm,
dedicated it to John Jack Higgins, which I'm assuming is related to the
yeah. To Jess. Yeah.
co-author. And
Yeah.
again, when women have your book in their hands,
Yeah.
I want them to know you and to
Oh,
get this and how much this means to you. So who is
mm.
John Jack Higgins that you dedicated this book to?
I got chills. John is Jess's dad. And John really was against this approach in his early diagnosis of a GBM. His wife was a nurse, his
Wait,
world
what's
was like,
GBM? Just
oh,
so
sorry, GBM, glioblastoma
I
multiforme,
Mhm.
most aggressive brain cancer there is. He saw the best of the best at Harvard. All of them telling him, at best, with our treatments, we can give you 12 months. And basically, his daughter begging and pleading, my co author saying, Dad, I know some things.
Mhm.
Please try just for me. If your dying wish is that you are helping me out, and he did. And within a short period of time, his scans were clear. And the Harvard team said, that's not anything we did. And they took note and they started asking questions of Jess and I. And then his scans were clear again several months later, and again several months later. And as what happens is sometimes we get complacent. And when we have partners who maybe say, I don't know if we need to keep doing this because you're fine now.
Yeah.
Within 2 weeks of basically stopping his program, he crashed his car, was rushed to the hospital, and they saw new tumor growth. And it's more difficult to get ahead of that when it recurs. We were able to stabilize things for quite a while. His quality of life was excellent all the way through, but we literally turned in our book, I think, on the 26th of November, and he died shortly before that. And
Mm.
so it was really heartbreaking, but also he was a freaking miracle. So
Yeah.
as much as like Jess and I know we could have done more and he could have done more, he already far exceeded what standard of care offered, and he already blew away the minds and hearts of his team at the, a prestigious, hospital, a prestigious academic institution. To we really wanted to celebrate this man because we did not see his death as a loss. We saw it as a victory, that he showed people that it can be done differently and better. And I will tell you, the Johns of the world, I have many other patients in that realm that are 10, 12, 15 years out with diagnoses like that, that no one ever talks about. And if you do, you often get shut down or
Yeah, I bet.
discredited or told you're making it up.
Yeah,
So
or it's a fluke instance or a miracle, or because
yeah,
it doesn't
right.
match the linear
Yeah,
science textbook.
totally.
Well, I
Yeah,
hope there's some stories in your next edition. Those
that's
patient
so
client stories. I like client because patient means to suffer, right? Like client
right.
stories. Yeah.
Oh, so good. Well, and even on our, on our metabolic region website, our terrain holding website, on the Dr. Nasha website, those do have tons of testimonials on there, and we're going to add to it. In fact, we're going to create because what happens when you write a book, and you'll learn this soon, you put it out there, and then it's so dynamic. Like this information, when we were, like you said, we were ahead of the game when this book came out.
Yeah.
Now everyone's talking about it, but the information, there's so much new validating information to it. We want to expand on that. And we want to envelop all the amazing things that are happening. And we want to do just that. We want to highlight that this is not anecdotal, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to create a website that stays dynamic around the book so that we can say, hey, here's some new information, because it might take us another decade to get the third edition out.
Of
But here's the
course.
really cool thing. Our book has stayed in hardback the entire time. That never happens in these places. We're one of their top authors. They went on a limb for us because one of their editors was an old patient of mine, and there it was like a favor of a favor. We were totally unknown, totally out there. The book is now over 150,000 copies sold, 9 languages,
Mm.
still going bonkers. It's still in the top 10 oncology books, and it still rises to number one every time I do a conference or whatnot, because it's still relevant. And unfortunately, more and more of us today, more so than when this book came out almost 10 years ago, are facing this diagnosis themselves, or someone near and dear to them is. And so we really hope and know that it is a valuable resource. And so I'm really grateful that you're willing to share this with your
Oh my
tribe,
gosh, yeah.
because the only prevention for cancer is, or the only treatment cure for cancer is prevention. And
Mm.
so that's where we really want to keep focusing, because as you said in the beginning, we all have it. So how do we help it stay in just sort of symbiotic relationship with us versus
Yeah.
it taking over the terrain?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Dr. Nisha, thank you so much. So, everybody who now is curious to learn more,
Cool.
we'll put all the links below. We're going to put Dr. Nisha's website links. I was watching earlier your incredible story that is embedded into that website. You guys have got to hop over there and watch. Just to get to know your heart even more and where you come from. Such a beautiful story, such a beautiful human. I'll be bringing Dr. Nasha into the podcast in a couple weeks. I'm not looking at the calendar right now. And those in the VIP membership to the Book Nook get to come in and do a private Q&A with you in the last 15 minutes. So
Ooh,
I'll
yes.
put links below for anyone who wants to learn more about that. Dr. Nasha, thank you not only for being here, but for being
Oh,
here and for doing what you do and taking what you experienced and changing the world through that. So thank you so much.
oh, it's such a joy to be with you, and I can't wait to do more.
Oh, love you.
Ciao, baby.
Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.